I love great conversations. Hi, my name is Angel Jones. Thank you for joining me on 12-Minute Convos, where I help you create a brand of your own unique real self. Listen in as I have conversations with amazing people from all over the world. Good night, Paul Levinson. How are you going on this wonderful, beautiful night?
I'm doing pretty well. It's here in New York. It's beautiful also. It's been in the 70s and sort of last little whisper of summer.
Oh, I'm so sad. Hey, we do emails where we email sunshine. So when it gets cold, we can surely send some up from the Caribbean for you. Yeah?
Absolutely. I'm always up for more sunshine.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Paul, tell me, which of your talents is responsible for us meeting?
I don't know. I mean, you would have to be the one to tell me that because I wear a whole bunch of hats. I do all kinds of things. I'm a science fiction author. I'm a nonfiction author. I've just written a book called Fake News in Real Context. I'm a professor. I do lots of interviews. So I guess you or your people came across some of that somewhere. And I'm glad that you thought me worthy of an interview.
Well, I'll tell you, it's definitely not my people. It's me. Like, I'm the one actually doing that clicking and connecting. It's actually me, folks. Like, it's really me.
Good.
I'm very focused on that being real. One time we did that where we automated it. That wasn't fun, but this is fun. Like, I get to choose the people I connect with, and your communication skills is really what stuck out to me in terms of what you've done via communications. What I'm doing is communication, right?
Hmm.
So tell us about the books you write. Tell us more. Tell us where we can get more information, where we can connect with what you do, and why we should.
Well, I write two kinds of books. My best known books probably are my books about media and technology and their impact on society. You can see a whole list of those. Just search on my name at Amazon, or you can go to my webpage, paullev.com, PAULLEV.com. And I've been writing those books for years and years and years. So I have about 15 of those books. They've been translated into, oh God, about 18 different languages: Chinese, Japanese, Arabic. So I'm probably better known, actually, I realized a little while ago, a couple of years ago, in China than I am here, because my books have been translated into Chinese, and China is just a much bigger country than the United States. And I'm constantly getting people who are coming from China over to New York saying, hey, I read your books. But the other thing I write is science fiction, and that's actually a lot more fun to write than a book about fake news in real context, or a book about Marshall McLuhan, the media theorist, much as I love writing about those, because when you're writing science fiction, you don't have to worry about footnotes and references and things like that. You just make it up as you go along. And so I've been having a great time writing both of those kinds of books.
Who did you learn the skill from, Paul? The ability to write.
Well, I think most writers like me learn from reading other writers. And as far as science fiction is concerned, I'm sure that I learned by reading Isaac Asimov. This was back in the 1950s, his Foundation trilogy, his robot stories. And as far as my nonfiction is concerned, that's a little harder to tell. You know, my parents subscribed to the New York Times, so I used to read that every day. And I picked up from a lot of places. I mentioned Marshall McLuhan. Marshall McLuhan, though, is a lot more of a poetic writer than I am. But I think in terms of going for a daring theory, an outrageous content, an outrageous idea, I probably picked that up from Marshall McLuhan.
Hmm. Love it. Well, folks, this first segment is all about Paul Levinson. So I'm going to do something that I believe he deserves because this is amazing, right? So here we go. his nonfiction books, including The Soft Edge 97 in 1997. I wouldn't call the date. We're going forward from 97, right? Digital McCullen, Real
Sure.
Space, Cell Phone, a New Media, McCullen in Age of Social Media, and Fake News in Real Context, and have been translated. Those are the 12 languages. And then we go on, right? So there's the Silk Code, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Award for Best First Science Fiction Novel, Borrowed Tides, The Conscious Plague, right? The Pixel Eye, The Plot to Save Socrates, On Burning Alexandria, and Chronica, the last three of which are known as the Sierra Waters trilogy. And it goes on, folks. So I just needed to do that because sometimes we're so humble in, well, it's like the humble thing to say. I did it, but when you hear it like that, it speaks masses to what Paul has accomplished. Why will you continue to repeat this skill, Paul?
Well, because this brings me an enormous amount of pleasure. I like talking, but I also like writing. In fact, I love both of them. To me, talking and writing are almost the same thing. Fortunately, I've been blessed. Writing for me is pretty much as easy as talking. And it's incredibly satisfying, to think about, say, my book, The Plot to Save Socrates, that right at this minute, there's someone, someplace in the world who I don't know from Adam, who's reading the book and I hope enjoying the book. And that's an extremely satisfying thing to think about. If you have ideas, you want to get them out there into the world. And for me, there's no more satisfying way of doing that than to put them into a book, either a novel or a short story in some cases, or a nonfiction article or a nonfiction book in other cases.
Well, tell me one other thing you've done consistently, Paul, over the last 3 years.
Well, a third thing that I do is music. And actually, this goes back even before I started writing. I have a record album out called Twice Upon a Rhyme and another album called Spun Dreams. And over the last few years, I've continued to write music. And I had a lot of fun about 2 years ago doing a live concert, a
Wow.
lot better than a dead concert, by the way, but a live concert out in Long Island, not that far here from New York. And for me, music is something that's always going on in my head. My wife and I just went to see Paul McCartney last week, and we enjoyed that immensely. It's the first time we saw him ever perform in person. So that's like the third part of my creative triad: nonfiction, science fiction, and music.
Wow, fascinating. How does it make you feel?
Well, it makes me feel great. I mean, first of all, listening to music brings you into another dimension, another world, another space, another time. You hear, apropos the Beatles, a song like Nowhere Man from the mid 60s. And I remember how I felt the first time I heard it. And so it brings you back into that time. But just the process of writing and listening and singing and talking, all of that makes me feel more in touch with the cosmos, more fulfilled.
Hmm. Suggest to someone out there why they should do what you've done by combining, like you said, the triad, right? So you're listening, you're writing, you're reading, why should they do that?
Well, if you're a person, and I suspect that there are most people in the world are like this, and you have ideas, you have things you want to say. You can imagine writing a song. You can imagine writing a novel or an article. The best thing you can do is to actually do it.
Hmm.
It's not that hard, because the thought in the first place is the most original part of the creative process. And once you have that thought in your head, get it out there to the world so other people can read it, can hear it, can think about it, be influenced by it. And I think it's an enormously satisfying way to live.
Love it. Amazing audience. We're live here with Paul Levinson, author, professor, media commentator, singer, songwriter. Paul, let's switch gears for a moment. Let me invite you into my time machine that is surrounded with beautiful, warm, blue Caribbean water. Paul, what is your earliest childhood memory?
Wow, my earliest childhood memory was my parents moved to a new place when I was just 3 years old. And I remember very clearly walking into this new apartment and looking out the window into the backyard. And there were a lot more trees and flowers in the backyard. And at the same time, not that far away from the backyard, there was a train that was running. And I remember very clearly the combination of these beautiful trees and flowers and a train chugging along in back of that. And in a strange way, even though I was 3 years old, it taught me how closely connected nature and technology are.
Wow.
They're not really opposite, they're part of the same process.
Wow, wow. Hey, can I offer an interpretation added to what you said to the thought picture you created in my mind?
Sure.
From conversations, from even the Lee Dumas conversation, which is one I really looked forward to. But in the conversation, he expressed a memory where he was in the backyard and there were leaves, and he was playing in the leaves, I believe. But even with what you are expressing, I love the idea that the eyesight that is occurring where you're looking through a window into a story that is occurring, the natural beauty of what the process of nature takes, and then that your mind goes to the other side, if you would, the science slash non-fiction side of your mind operating, if not in sync, and the beauty that creates. Additionally, the third thing, which is the music, the rhythmic song of the train, right? Yeah.
That's a great analysis. I like that. I
You're
agree with it
welcome.
completely.
You're welcome. If we fast forward to when you were 12, what was your favorite song?
Wow, when I was 12 years old, it would probably be Buddy Holly's song, Maybe, baby, I'll have you.
Maybe, baby,
Maybe,
I'll
baby,
have
you'll
you.
be true.
Maybe, baby,
Maybe,
you'll
baby,
be
that
true.
someday.
Maybe, baby, I'll
Love
have
Buddy Holly.
it.
you.
Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Well, it all connects in fascinating ways. Things always connect. We keep speaking about three, and you sang three lines there. It's just fascinating, right?
Three's a great number.
It is a great number. Well,
Yeah.
Paul, we've arrived at our destination, but before we get off of this time machine, there's a small declaration form. So it's yes or no, possibly a bit more. Paul, have you chosen someone to pass on your skills to?
Yes, it's more than one person though. So, I have two kids, a son and a daughter, and I have a grandson who's just a year and a half old. And
Wow.
so, in one way or another, I'm hopeful that some of whatever I have going, in terms of talent, will be passed on to them. And actually, both my son and my daughter are people who've written articles and written songs as well. And my grandson, a year and a half old, is a little too young to write, but he can certainly talk up a storm. So he definitely takes after his grandfather.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Are you married?
Yes, I am happily married to the same woman, Tina. We met in the late 1960s. We got married in the mid 1970s, and we've been living happily ever since.
Wow. So my math says 48 years.
Ah,
Wow. Wow. One secret, please.
wow. Okay, here's a secret. I'm a professor. I rarely prepare for any of the classes I teach because I think I know what I'm talking about. I know some professors who basically they're constantly preparing. Once in a blue moon, maybe I look something up. But I figure if you don't know what you're talking about, you shouldn't be in a classroom.
Love it. Well, do you believe in God, Paul?
I believe in God in this way, actually, in two ways. One, I think there is something in the universe that we can't understand. When you ask how the universe starts, where are we going? There's a fundamental part of life that is beyond human understanding. And if you want to call that God, that's okay with me. The other part of it is I think all of us, all sentient beings, also have part of that because there's something magical in each of us that goes beyond what even other living things have. So in that sense, I think the notion of a deity is something that's in every human being internally.
What about an inner circle of friends? Do you have an inner circle of friends?
Yes, I do have an inner circle of friends, people, and this circle goes back to actually when I was a little kid.
Hmm.
Yeah, and one of the things, by the way, that social media do is they enable you to get back in touch with people that you might have fallen out of touch with. So I'll just mention this guy by name, Joel Iskowitz. He's a world-renowned illustrator. He's done stamps and all kinds of things all over the world.
Hmm.
Well, Joel Iskowitz and I have been friends since the 5th grade, where we were basically both looking at the same girl and saying, "Hey, she's pretty nice." We were we were just little kids, and we stayed in touch for a while. Then we fell out of touch, but in the last 10 years, we've gotten back in touch, and so my circle of friends is actually much deeper and richer than it was even 15, 20 years ago
Wow.
because of social media.
Hmm. Amazing. And what about TV? Do you watch TV for more than 3 hours a day?
Yes, I usually do for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm a news junkie, so I watch at least 3 or 4 hours of news a day on the cable television stations, mainly MSNBC here in the United States. But in addition to that, my wife and I both binge watch all kinds of television shows. So, for example, there was a show that I think it was on CBS this summer, but I binge watched it on Amazon just last week called Salvation, about there's
Good.
an asteroid on its way to hit the Earth, and they're building a ship to get off the Earth. A
Yeah.
great science fiction. So, I watch television all the time. And, people used to say television ruins your mind and, makes you stupid. And I always say, hey, if it ruined my mind, it must have ruined it so badly that I'm not even aware of it.
And what about screen time? What about the phone and or the computer? Is that more than 8 or less than 8 hours a day?
That's more than 8 because that's constant, especially
Okay.
with smartphones. I'm always on Twitter. I'm always on Facebook, Instagram, email. I do all my writing on computers. So I couldn't imagine life without computers. And I remember when, personal computers were first introduced in the late 70s and early 80s. And I remember thinking when I got my very first personal computer, it was a K-Pro 2 CPM, probably in a museum somewhere now. But I knew right then it was a great device if you're someone who thinks and writes.
That is fascinating. Paul, my friend, after having 1,001 conversations in 2016, I came up with a workbook that's called Yours, YOURS, and it stands for your own unique real self, as well as your own unique real statement, your mission. If you had to share with us your own unique real statement, something that represents you, what would you say that is?
If you can think it, do it.
Love it. Love it. Paul Levinson, this was a great pleasure. Before you leave, is there anything else you'd like to share with our amazing audience?
Well, I just want to emphasize, I think there are an enormous number of talented people out there, but for one reason or another, things get in the way of their expressing their talent. So take it from me. Give it a shot. What do you have to lose? If you have something to say or write or sing, do it.
Love it. Paul Levinson, thank you for being on What is Inspired by 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones.
My pleasure, Angel.
Thank you for being on 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones. Stay tuned for more from our advertisers.
Diabetes is a mountain pandemic. It's a disease that's not acute but chronic. Similar to this rhyming method, I have simplified the definition, the signs and symptoms, and the complications of diabetes for both adults and children in my books, Poems for Patients, A Focus on Diabetes, and The ABCs of Diabetes for Children. These books are available on Amazon.com, and for more information, you can visit my website, poemsbyaj.com. That's poemsbyaj.com.